To be able to sew limbs, you are going to want to be using equipment such as pins, needle, obviously you need your thread as well, some toy stuffing, and the actual limbs that you're wanting to produce. So here is one that's already been produced. It's got a little bit of thickness in it here, and it gives it some nice stability to the shape itself that's going to be one of my horns. To be able to create another one of these, you are going to cut out 2 identical pieces for the same shape with my seam allowance added onto this, and you're going to pin these together so that the edges match up perfectly. I only need 1 pin in this as it's a temporary method of holding things together before I'm ready to stitch it. My needle has been threaded with a contrasting thread because my design wants to be able to be seen, and I've tied a knot in the end to secure this off. When I start stitching my limbs, I want to make sure that I do 4 or 5 stitches on the spot in order to make those stitches really secure and not fall out when I come to add in my stuffing. Once I've done this, as before, I'm going to create a running stitch all the way along the outside of my limb, in this case the horn. So remember, a running stitch goes in and out in an up and down motion the whole way through the outside of your shape. You want to make sure these are nice and close to your edge and are held securely in that seam allowance area. If they're too close to the middle, you are going to struggle to be able to get some of that stuffing into your horn to add that dimension. So I'm working all the way around this shape here. The one area that I don't want to be stitching is the part of my shape that's going to be attached to my monster. In the case of this horn, you can see it's this bottom area just down here. Your key to running stitch is to make sure that each stitch and each gap is of a similar size to ensure that none of your stuffing comes out around the edges. The bigger the stitches, the more likelihood there is of these pieces coming apart. Make sure at all times this lays nice and flat and doesn't start puckering up. If this starts puckering up, just gently smooth it out with your fingers and carry on. As I'm getting near the end, I can take that pin out now because it's only going to be in my way as I'm finishing it off. So the same as when we started, we're going to do 4 or 5 stitches on the spot to make this a really secure line of running stitch around the outside of the horn. You know this is really secure when you can pull on it and the running stitches that you've created on this horn don't move. And this is my finished shape. So to be able to add stuffing to this, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my toy stuffing, I'm going to take a tiny little piece to begin with, and I'm going to open up the gap inside the horn itself, and I am going to stuff this in. Now, because this piece is quite small here, what I'm actually going to use, I'm going to use a pencil. And just pushing this through with a pencil means that I can get stuff right at the top of the shape itself. You want to start stuffing from this end downwards, because if you put too much at this end, you're not going to be able to fill it to the end of your limb. So it's really important that you stuff from that top point downwards. So it's really important when you've stuffed this to make sure that it's still slightly squidgy. You don't want to be making this so compact that it becomes solid, as you may find your running stitch then comes undone. If this is the case, just take a little bit of your wadding out and reduce it, and then pop this back in again. And what you want to make sure right at the end of your limb is that you've actually got a small amount of that area absolutely free of any of the wadding, so that you can take a pin and you can pin this together, and that bit stays nice and flat in the same way that this does. And now you should have two pieces that are nearly identical, that are going to be the pieces to give my monster horns. In the next video, we're going to see how to attach these onto our monster itself.